Today we're going to build a cloud function that's capable of resizing an image into multiple thumbnails after it's initially uploaded. This is one of the most commonly needed features for a cloud storage bucket, but doing it requires some pretty advanced Node.js code. In today's video, we'll build this cloud function from scratch and do everything we can to optimize performance for the fastest possible execution. If you're new to the channel, like and subscribe, and if you want to get really good at cloud functions, consider enrolling in my Cloud Functions Master course, which was just released yesterday. The course is free if you're already a pro member, but if not, I'll go ahead and leave a discount code in the video description as well. To get started, I am assuming that you have the Firebase command line tools installed, then we can run Firebase init functions in any existing project. I'm going to select TypeScript here, but you could also select JavaScript, but I would recommend that you use the new Node.js 8 runtime because we'll be using a lot of async await syntax here. And that's not available in the default Node 6 runtime. Once that's done, we can cd into the functions directory, and then we have a couple of dependencies to install here. The Cloud Functions environment by default doesn't have tools set up for you to download files from a storage bucket, but we can install the Google Cloud Storage Node.js client to take care of that for us. When a storage cloud function is triggered, it doesn't give you access directly to the file, but instead it just gives you some information about the file that was uploaded. So we'll need the Google Cloud Storage library to actually download it and resize the image, and then re-upload those back to the bucket. We're also going to install a library called Sharp because it's 4 to 5 times faster than the ImageMagick library that's installed in the Cloud Functions environment. And if you've ever used ImageMagick in a cloud function before, you'll know that it's pretty cumbersome. Sharp is just way more developer friendly, it's promise-based, and we'll be able to do all of our resizing with a single line of code. The last dependency I'll install is Node File System Extra. This is a promise-based version of the Node file system, which tends to be much more easy to work with in a Cloud Functions environment. Let's go ahead and install that with npm, then we'll have everything in place that we need to work with files in a developer-friendly way. The goal of this function is to listen for a file upload to be finalized. When that happens, it will take the source file, resize it into multiple different sizes that you can specify, and then re-upload them into that same directory in the bucket. One thing that's really important to keep in mind here is that when you have a storage cloud function that gets triggered on finalize, that will get triggered for every single file that gets uploaded to this bucket, including the thumbnails that we upload from the function itself. That's really important because we need to give our code a certain exit point to know when to not upload a file, because otherwise we'll end up in an infinite loop. If you create an infinite loop, your bucket will end up with thousands of new files uploaded to it, and it won't stop uploading until it reaches the quota limits. And if you don't catch it early, you might rack up some unnecessary charges on your Firebase bill. Now we'll go ahead and jump into the code, and just to warn you, the most complicated thing about this function is keeping track of the different file paths between the local functions file system and the storage bucket. First, we'll instantiate the storage client, which we'll use to download and upload files. Then every cloud function has a temporary directory that you can write files to. The way you access it is with this temp_dir method from Node. And then we'll also import a couple of helpers from Node. Join allows us to join paths together, and directory name allows us to get the directory from a file name. And lastly, we'll bring in Sharp and fsextra that we installed earlier. We can give the cloud function a name of generate thumbs, and we'll have it run on the onFinalize event on the storage bucket, which just means that a file was fully uploaded somewhere in the bucket. We'll be awaiting a whole bunch of different promises in this function, so we'll make the callback on the function itself an async function. We need to tell the cloud storage client which bucket to use to upload and download files, which we can just get from the object that triggered this function. Then we have a handful of different variables that we need to define here just to keep track of the paths in the storage bucket and in the local system. We can get the full path to the file in the bucket by calling object name. Then we'll make a reference to the file name as well. And we'll also want to make reference to the directory that this file came from, because that's eventually where we're going to upload our thumbnails to. Now we need to download the source file to a working directory, and then we'll also need to save our thumbnails in a working directory temporarily as well. So what I'm going to do is create a new directory in the temporary directory called thumbs, because we'll eventually want to delete this once we exit the function just to clean everything up. And lastly, I'll define a path for where we're going to download the source image, which I'll just call source.png. At this point, we need to set up our breakpoint to avoid causing an infinite loop. The concept is exactly the same as a recursive function in programming fundamentals. We want to exit from this function early if it's been triggered by an image that's already been resized. And we'll figure that out by using this thumb at keyword. If that string is present in the file name, then we just want to exit because we know that it's already been resized. And at this point, we can also check if the content type is not an image. In that case, we'll also want to exit early. You can exit from a function by just returning false, and that will prevent the execution of any code that comes after it. Now that we have the initial setup done, we just have a series of steps to go through that are pretty straightforward if you look at them step by step. The first one is we need to make sure that our working directory exists. Otherwise, we'll get an error if we try to use it, and we can do that with fs ensure directory with our directory path. Now that we know the directory exists, we'll go ahead and download the source file to that working directory, which we'll do with the GCS library. We can await the bucket file to be downloaded to the path that we defined in that working directory. After the file is downloaded, the third step is to resize it to the thumbnail sizes that we want, and then we'll want to set up an array of promises that represent the upload operations for each one of those thumbnails. There are different ways you can do this, but what I'm going to do is set up an array of different thumbnail sizes. Then I'll map that array to an array of promises where each promise is an upload operation back to the bucket. We can run those promises concurrently, which should improve performance, especially if you have a lot of different thumbnail sizes. Each thumbnail will have the thumb at keyword, followed by its size, and then the original file name. Then we'll define the full path to the working directory where we'll save that file. When you call map on an array, it's just looping over its values. So what we'll do here is await the sharp library to resize the image and save it to the local file system, which we do by just passing it the original source image, call resize with the size we want it to be. And you can also call a whole bunch of different other methods here in Sharp. Resizing like this will crop the image from the center and size it to these dimensions. Then we say to file with the thumbnail path. And then the last thing we'll do in this map operation is return the bucket upload with this newly saved file. Then we'll set the destination to the original file's destination with this new file name. So that gives us an array of promises. Now the only thing we have to do is run them, which we could do by saying await promise all with these upload promises. That will run the uploads concurrently. And then once that's complete, the last step is to just delete these files from the file system since they're no longer needed. So as the fifth and final step, we'll go ahead and return from the function with fs remove the working directory. Now let's go ahead and deploy the function so we can test it out. Now any files that get uploaded to storage will automatically get a series of thumbnails generated for them. And the performance should be pretty solid. In most cases I've seen latency of about 1 or 2 seconds, but performance really depends on the size of the file that was uploaded and also the number of thumbnails that you're generating. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up there. If this video helped you, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to check out the Cloud Functions Master Course. I'd love to get your feedback and hear additional Cloud Functions topics that you'd like to see covered in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.